Last week, my good friend had called into the program and surprised me with his support for companies like Walmart being efficient and in so doing maybe deserving or loss of small cities losing their mom and pop business because Walmart comes in and offers a better, more efficient price, etc., etc., etc. The way we are taught comes out to certain types of analyses, and that goes for me as well. When I learned about how capitalism worked and when I learned about how America came to be and when I learned about all these things, I learned it from a certain perspective that made me think it was my level of indoctrination that let me think it was just standard modus operandi. Standard operating procedure. There's just how things are. And that is the way we learn. So we are all indoctrinated to some effect on how things are supposed to be, and that's how they are. I want to give some examples from history that we have learned over time. We have to remember in the 19th century, something called manifest destiny. We thought that United States, out of all the countries and municipalities and kingdoms in the world, that we had divine right to come to America, United States, and move westward and do whatever it was necessary to move westward, conquer, and take. It was our manifest destiny. And we learned that in history and we just accept it, right? We don't look at what the results are from said acceptance that somebody up top, because they wanted to take land, justified it by pulling some concept out of the air and called it manifest destiny. And that's what gave us the right to move westward, conquer, kill, maim, genocidally attack, kill. That allows us to do that. And we learned that in school in an antiseptic manner. Manifest destiny, and we move forward and we had westward expansion. The other concept we learned without thought and we just accepted, the Monroe Doctrine. I'm from Panama, Central America, a product of the Monroe Doctrine. Roosevelt sent a ship off the coast of Colon. They wanted to build a canal in Panama, which was a part of Colombia. And Colombia said no. The Lesseps and these French were building great canals in Saudi Arabia, and they were going to try to build a sea level canal in Panama. They failed. America wanted that canal for commerce. The Monroe Doctrine, we control the hemisphere, puts a ship outside of Colon, got some radicals in Panama to declare independence, and hey, without further ado, I became a Panamanian citizen because, what again? Monroe Doctrine allowed them to say we're building that canal and we are going to do it whether Colombia wants to or not. We control this hemisphere. We decide to accept that as standard modus operandi. I want you to keep those two thoughts in your heads, that we just decide to do something and now we teach it and we accept it just for the sake of accepting it. Earlier, I was speaking about the Monroe Doctrine and manifest destiny. These are concepts that we learn in history in high school or even middle school that we don't get a grasp of how it has actually affected and damaged people here, both the indigenous folks and folks around the world. But we accept it, and we accept it as just the natural order. Same, we accept our economic system as just the natural order. We accepted slavery as just the necessary evil of capitalism. We accepted destruction of slavery as just, don't believe all that you read again, that the Civil War is what the benevolence of the Northerners who liberated the slaves was a great thing that happened, right? The slaves only got liberated because the country and its manifest destiny and all these other things could continue without the slave institution. The slave institution was necessary for the fast development of the United States. That's a statement of fact. And only after the cotton gin and other things that allowed the mechanization of farming, etc., was slavery not necessary going forward, and it could have been ended. And the benevolence of the North to save these folks. Now, look, let me tell my Southern brothers, a lot of folks up North would have you believe that there's something inherently more benevolent on a personal level than the Southerner. Look, I love Southern people. I love Northern people. And I mean that from the depths of my heart. Humanity is humanity is humanity. And the same prejudices that occurs in the South occurs in the North. The only difference is that the South slavery was necessary because, again, it's a growing region. It's a region that developed cotton and it was very efficient to have slavery then. It's no longer very efficient. Now we have antiseptic slavery in the form of employees. Now, that's it. Why am I bringing all this up? I'm bringing all this up because, again, as I said, one of the calls really hit me very hard because it's a good progressive person that believed that it is okay that Walmart moves into town and if they can give you better pricing, that it is okay for the mom and pop stores who can't afford those things to close. So when I wrote up the program today, I wrote up some bullet points that I want to cover. A lot of folks are scared about whenever we talk about a change in economic system because they think we're talking communism and all these things that the plutocracy, that the capitalists have made you fear. So they're saying, why get rid of an evil system if the system that is going to be replaced by is going to be even more evil, which isn't true. Capitalism is a man-made system. Communism is a man-made system. Socialism is a man-made system. These are fairly absolutes in different directions, but as man-made economic systems, we have the ability to develop systems where that they are equitable and inclusive. In other words, we have a system where capital doesn't have to be God. Our economic system abstracts the different forms of theft to justify the unearned wealth of most millionaires and billionaires. You know, we are lied to, just like we accept manifest destiny as a matter of fact. The Monroe Doctrine as just one of those things. We have accepted our economic system as just one of those things. It is not. None of those things are one of those things. Imagine an indigenous person going to regular high school and simply thinking when they come out and they start to teach you history, teach you about manifest destiny, teach you about Christopher Columbus being this hero, but you knowing that Christopher Columbus in his own writings was somebody who abused children, was somebody who killed and maimed. Not somebody saying, but in his own writings, you don't learn that, but we honor him. Why then should we honor a Donald Trump as well? We don't understand that what we have done, that Donald Trump is a representation in full force of everything, all the things that we have actually done. We were better at being better, but Donald Trump came out and said, this is who we really, really are. Remember that kid learning history, that indigenous kid whose history traced tens of thousands of years on this land, coming out to think when he's learning, has to learn that these people who harmed them were great people. Imagine Black and indigenous who have to learn that Lee and all these guys were honorable people, and you want them to sit down in a class and just accept that. You want all of us who are maimed an economic system to sit down and accept it. All of you that are going to work every morning right now, everybody that is sitting down. So when my friend called about, the efficiency of Walmart and it's okay if they can give the product at better efficiency, we have to understand at whose cost and what makes it more efficient. Somebody called in with a true fact and said and reminded us that Walmart wealth is acquired by paying lower wages, that all those people in the neighborhood who shop at Walmart at the expense of the mom and pop store, also their taxes has to be used to pay for the substandard employee compensation by giving them welfare, giving them food stamps, because that profit, that cheap product that you are getting is at the expense of employees that are making less, employees that now must be on welfare, must be on food stamps. So you're paying cheaper products, but your taxes are making up the bubble. Our capitalism, our economic system has created real estate bubbles, tech booms. These billionaires have made their monies not because they invented something of value, but because they stole something of value. Let's give an example. When it comes to things like the tech boom, when the tech boom occurred, a small group of investors would find three young, I call them the young punks, three young punks that created a website, used fancy words, and capitalized that company, turned that company into stocks. And a lot of people bought stocks in something that had really no value. So we had folks like Mark Cuban and all these other billionaires that during the tech boom, they made money off of capitalized companies that produced nothing, and they sold the companies off before the companies failed from having had products that created nothing. And boom, they became billionaires. But for every billionaire that was created, millions of Americans lost their shirt because they bought these stocks from their ignorance of not understanding how capital markets work. Legal, what all these guys did, but nonetheless legalize what I call legalize theft. And then these are the guys who now run the country. It has nothing to do with democracy. They were all sitting behind Trump. Bezos bought the Washington Post, who decided that it could no longer endorse the president that it found more competent. Why? These billionaires, again, that didn't make their monies but on other people's backs, became wealthy, and they stuck with the one who would ensure that they could keep up and did the wealth. The same thing happened with the real estate bubbles. People that shouldn't have certain loans got the loans because they know they could capitalize on all the sales of those bad loans with certain financial instruments called derivatives and default swaps that by the time the economy crashed from all these bad loans, a lot of billionaires walked off with the money. Another form of theft, the real estate bubble, which I covered in a 5-part series called The Con, created by a friend of mine who was a Hollywood producer. We had currently the billionaires that make profits from the defense industrial complex. When we give all that money to Ukraine, that money doesn't go to Ukraine. That money goes to the military industrial complex to build bombs for Ukraine to drop. So the taxpayer just gives money to the military industrial complex who build bombs for Ukraine to use and kill people, for Israel to use and kill people. Our tax dollars profits the Defense Department industrial complex to profit the other. Same in healthcare, the healthcare industrial complex. We pay more money for these drugs that we, the people, invented at universities, we pay for, and then capitalized by the private sector, we pay those bills. And how humane it is that if you have a disease and you don't have the money for the drugs that can cure that disease, you just ultimately die. Wow, what a society. Are we civilized or what? And the same apply with the food industrial complex. The seeds that are manufactured by now, the ADMs of the world and all these other companies. Now, if the pollen from your farm gets into the pollen of another farm, and those genetically modified seeds you start to produce because of pollen migration, you now owe ADM. You can't use your own seeds. You got to pay ADM. Another ripoff of the taxpayer, another ripoff of the average American citizen. But none of this stuff is discussed in detail on mainstream media. You don't know this stuff. Why would you? Why would you have to know this stuff? Why would you? It's all behind the scene. And that's why we can say, okay, it is okay for Walmart to go into small towns and kill industries because they're more efficient when they are not more efficient. They are more extractive, because to get that little Walmart into that little town gives tax abatements. That little town builds infrastructure. That little town, the taxpayer dollars from all of us go to pay for the underpaid Walmart employee. And then we call that efficiency? No. But again, we first have to understand how the system actually work. But nobody wants to teach us that, because if we understand how the system works, we will never allow the system as it is to exist. One of our goals, the goals of many of us doing this kind of work, is to really hope that we can penetrate the space of enough to understand how the system works so that we can ensure it cannot persist and we develop a truly equitable system where your worth is dictated by what you really are. And for those who says, well, this system works and all the skyscrapers we build and all the streets we build, and what system is more efficient? It doesn't quite exist yet, but we can create it because it is all man-made. The people who build those skyscrapers can't even enter them after they're built. The people who believe that we need this economic system in order to have innovation, the innovators don't make the money in this country. It's the people who decide, I am going to invest in that innovator, that makes the money. We have to understand that engineers don't ask for much. Scientists don't ask for much. It's the people who go to business school and figure out how they can live on the intellect of others that make the money in this country. Once we understand that, we'll start demanding what is ours, what we work for.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.